welcome to another episode of Journey to the Rise. In today's episode, we talk with Kris D'Amico. You may remember Kris from a previous podcast that I had shared in an earlier episode of Journey to the Rise. A lot has changed for Kris in the past 8 years, and I had him open up and really dig into his journey. What was fun for me during this conversation was the easement of talking to Kris. For someone at his level of success, he is humble and incredibly down to earth. We talk about how simply being kind to others, maintaining a level of curiosity in the world we live in, and working collectively towards a common goal can inspire us and lead us to opportunities. There's so much to dive into with this conversation, so let's not wait any longer. Please welcome my guest, Kris D'Amico. This talented photographer has been to 41 states, 24 countries. He has photographs, portraits, industries, food, creates images to show and tell. He straddles the line of traditional advertising and new media, and we get to kind of dive in and learn a little bit about him today. Kris, thank you so much for being with us.
Hey, thanks for having me. It's kind of wild
absolutely.
Being on a thing with you.
I know. It is kind of crazy. I'm grateful you're here.
Oh, thanks. You're too kind. We've known each other a long time, so this is fun.
A long time, yeah.
Yeah.
I know. I'm excited to learn a little bit more about you. So I want to kick it off from the beginning of Kris D'Amico. Where did you grow up?
Wow, going way back. So I kind of grew up all over. My dad was in medical research, and he went to school actually at the University of Rome. So I was there until I was like, I say 6. I think technically it was like 5.5. And then we moved to New York, and between that would have been 83 and 89, I lived in New York, Connecticut, Minnesota, Ohio, Columbus, Ohio, and I'm missing one. And one more, somewhere in there. And then we moved to Nashville. So it was just like bing, 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 just all over. Just him going for different contracts, it was all medical research. So it was, 6 months here, 8 months here, look at this study, look at that study. So really all over. And then once we got to Tennessee in 89, I was 10, and we just kind of stayed, which is nice because I got friends from, middle school I still connect with every now and then. So.
Oh, that's nice. Because it can be a challenge for kids to move around a lot. That's really fun that you still stay in touch with them.
It's so I've got 2 boys now. One's in middle school, one's in high school. And one of the things my wife and I talked about was really making sure that we stayed in kind of that same community so they could have kind of some deep roots. And it's been interesting because a lot of what I attributed to my ability to have a conversation with a brick wall is for that moving around constantly. But I've noticed a similar quality in both my kids, that they've never met a stranger. So maybe that's a genetic thing, and it just I've been attributing the wrong thing the whole time. But it's been interesting kind of seeing them have kind of the opposite experience I did, where I was just all over the place all the time, and they've, I mean, the house we brought them home to is a mile from the house we live in now. So we have not gone very far.
Yeah. So. That's nice, though. So do you think that aspect of moving around a lot kind of your childhood shaped you for your future and being so personable?
I think it helps because, you got to make friends. I don't think I'm a natural extrovert, but I would say I'm an extroverted introvert, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. So I feel like, traveling as much as we did, because we would even, I don't know how many times people have moved, but it's not like you just like pack up and move, right? You go to the city, you hang out there, you see a couple houses, you do some things, eat somewhere, you maybe go to a show or to a game or whatever, and then you come home and you talk about it, and then you make a deal on a thing, and right? So I felt like we were constantly almost interviewing where Dad was going. Even as a little kid, I remember when we landed in Minneapolis, we initially looked at living in St. Paul, and I forget the name of the little town. There's a little town in between Minneapolis and St. Paul that we looked at, but it was the middle of spring when we looked, and everything was so picturesque. And my mom was like, "This is going to be terrible in the winter. These tiny little roads. We've got to have decent sized roads because they get so much snow." And so we decided to move effectively into I can't remember the neighborhood in Minneapolis, but a great little suburb in Minneapolis. Well, by the time we moved, it was October, and the first snow had already fallen, and so by
Oh
November
no.
we were under 2 feet of snow.
Oh no.
But it was really interesting though to experience that because I had come from at that point we were in New York proper, a lot of family in Brooklyn and Bronx. So culturally, that was a huge shift to go from New York to the Midwest, you know, and go
Yeah.
from New York snow, which hey, it's cities, hey, forget about it, to Midwestern snow, which is a different animal. Anyway, just I feel like even things like that when I think about somebody talks about like an ideal photograph or an ideal scene of like this snowy countryside, immediately my brain goes to 7-year-old me walking out the front door and literally being up to snow up to here, seeing all these little picturesque houses down these little roads. So I think that travel did affect a lot of that. And then we were there for, I don't think we were there for 9 months. So I started school late, had to make a bunch of friends, and then I left school before it was finished that next year, only to make friends again and then run into the summer. So it's like
Oh my gosh.
I learned how to make friends quickly.
Yeah, no kidding. Wow. And so you end up in Tennessee. Where did you decide to go to college?
So I went to UT Knoxville. Um, I felt like when I was picking schools, I wanted I don't know. I don't know what I wanted. I knew that I wanted a place that had a decent program. When I went, I initially thought I was going to be an engineer. Thought I was going to go be an aerospace engineer or whatever. I don't even know. That's like
Yeah.
me from another lifetime talking. And so we looked at all these like engineering based schools, and there were all these, you know, great schools, but in these tiny towns, little map dots. So when we toured UT, it was the first place that I'd ever stepped on that felt like a college, which is funny because we live here in Nashville, which is a college town. How many colleges are there around here?
I
My parents,
so
no, let's
many.
drive 3 hours away. Not just hey, let's go to Belmont or let's go to Lipscomb or let's go to one of these other great colleges and right here, MTSU. No, 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 no. Let's
TSU
drive
for,
three and a
yeah,
half hours
all of
away.
them. Of course.
Yeah, I mean, there's
In
great
another
schools
time
around here.
zone.
Uh, yeah, yeah, another time zone. But it was the first. There's a building on campus called Ayers Hall, and it's this like nod to this kind of true collegiate architecture, American collegiate architecture, right? It's that kind of colonial style. And I just remember seeing that, and being like, oh, okay, this is real. I like this, and that kind of helped me make a decision in a weird way. Making a decision on aesthetics for college, not recommended.
Yeah.
Don't do it. Had a great education there. Had a great time there. Uh, but yeah, I majored in media arts there too. I started in engineering about halfway through my freshman year. I thought this is not for me. I just engineers are great, and I have a lot of friends that are engineers. My mind doesn't work like those folks' mind do, if that makes sense. Like it
Mm-hmm.
had nothing to do with like I couldn't make the classwork or this or that. It's just the thought process was totally different because they're like linear. Everything's got a spreadsheet, everything's lined out, and I'm over here looking out the window going, "Huh, I didn't think it was supposed to rain today. Do you guys think it was going to rain today?" And they're like, "Are you not focusing?" I'm like, "Yeah, yeah, I'm thinking about it." And they're like, "What are you doing? Sit down." Uh, so I just kind of have this rabbit trail brain that I think a lot of creatives share. Um, and so one thing led to another. I did a stint in graphic design, and then that design turned into photography, and the kind of rest is history.
That's amazing. And I think a lot of people they get very caught up on what school they need to go to. I must major in this. And like you even said like engineer was, a lifetime ago. But I think that's more common and I think it would be nice if more college students and those in high school going into college could hear that, so that pressure that you have to decide could be lifted. Because, I mean, halfway through your freshman year, like, this is not for me. And that is so
Yeah.
okay. It is so okay. And, I mean, you turned out pretty
I
good.
feel like I also feel like, with to your point, I mean, the price of college. It's like, give it a minute, you know. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, I don't know. I guess my generation is that one where it was like, we're like, as soon as we get done, we're gonna do this. We're gonna try to chase the suburban house. We're gonna do, and it's just kind of like, what in the world? Who said that to us? That's
Right.
ridiculous. So I think it's,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm thinking UT. I don't remember what it cost when I was there. Not nearly what it costs now. But even
Sure.
still, I'm like, even if it was like, I don't know, $10, right? I could have saved my parents $5 if I would have stopped and been like, you know what, I'm gonna take a semester off, think about my life, and then, you know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
like, I don't know.
Yeah.
So
And I went
not
to
that it's all about
college with a
money,
girl that every semester it was a 2 year university, so you didn't have to pick a major. But every semester she would take her generals, but then dive into one particular subject. And then the next semester she'd dive into another subject. And she did this for 4 semesters. So that by the time she was a junior, she's like, I don't like any of this. I'm going to go in this direction. And I'm thinking, man, that's brilliant. I wish, I don't know who gave her this idea, or if people were calling her flaky, but by the end of the sophomore semester, like the year, I'm like, no, that's actually really smart. There's no flakiness about that.
yeah. I bet she is a incredibly well-adjusted and successful adult now.
Mm-hmm. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll have more from our guest, Kris, as I ask him about the awards he has won for his work and how it felt to receive such grand honors for his photography. To stand out on social media and the internet, for a business to grow, you need branding images that help express who you are and what you represent. Being a driven business owner, you already know your audience needs to see your brand show up on a regular basis before they will trust you enough to work with you. If your current messaging is inconsistent and lacks cohesiveness, then your customers will scroll past instead of click and look more into what you have to offer. With a branding photo session with Girl Boss Photography, you can tell your story through images. Utilizing those images in your marketing and content strategy will enhance your appearance and help build a connection to your existing and potential clients. Girl Boss Photography loves working with small and medium sized businesses to help them build a strong visual brand. By partnering with you and listening to your goals, Girl Boss Photography will curate a branding session that will tell the story of who you are, what you do, and how you were there to help your clients. If you are wanting to grow your business, improve your online presence, contact Girl Boss Photography to find out more about your options with their branding packages. You can find them on Instagram at girl.boss.photography. Have you been stagnant in the growth of your business? Would you like to see an increase to your revenue goals? Show your clients you are an authority in your industry with a video docu-series, photography, and content strategy package with Girl Boss Productions. A video series will help customers get to know you and allow you to build a relationship with people who want to support you. Using video on your website and in your marketing content, you can increase conversions by 80%. By enhancing your presence on social media and your website with updated and stylish photos, you can zhuzh up your marketing content. Giving it a little je ne sais quoi will grab the attention of your clients, and they will take a little more time to read your post instead of scrolling past it. Utilizing video, photos, and a content strategy all in one package will promote your business to existing and potential clients and help develop a relationship with clients who want to support you, which will result in increased sales. If you would like to know more about how you can enhance your business with video, contact girlbossproductions.com today. Welcome back to Journey to the Rise. We continue our conversation with Kris D'Amico. Kris talks about the importance of personal relationships and how putting people first is the only way he wants to do business. So you get into
That's
photography, And you've been very successful with your photography, where many have struggled and even failed. What do you think is different about you that has brought on your level of success?
Um, I, I feel like I feel like there's a lot of artists out there that are much better at the craft than I am. And we'll talk about this a little bit later because that was kind of the whole purpose behind starting this new reactor company. But I feel like I can point a lot of my successes personally and professionally to just trying to be nice, trying to always assume positive intent, trying to, kind of listen more than I speak. You wouldn't guess that from this interview so far, but um, I don't know. It's just I feel like there's a if you can figure out a way to be good to everybody in your life in some way, and it doesn't have to be these crazy things. You don't have to like kill yourself serving people, but if you just be nice to people, I feel like that goes a long way. And I feel like that has opened doors and kept doors open that probably would have closed otherwise. Um, and then with that, I just I love diving into the details of photography and of image making. I'll see something online that I'm inspired by, and it's like, okay, why does that look like an illustration? They're not doing this technique, which it doesn't look like it. They're not doing this technique, so it's got to be retouching. Okay, why are they retouching it that way? And so it's just I love that kind of level of kind of nerdery around the craft. So I think, and I don't mind I don't mind pushing that boundary and kind of being like, let's figure out this look, let's do this thing, without kind of being willing to do it myself. And I feel like that though has come from years of dealing with people that are very cranky about things that are kind of ridiculous. And I'm like, it's cool. Don't just take a breath. Who cares? Big deal.
Yeah.
So I feel like those kind of, and that's kind of a circular. Did I even answer the question? I feel like I'm rambling now.
You are answering the question. Yeah, absolutely. I think kindness goes a long way, and your intrigue of curiosity of how to capture the image, how to make it better, how you can put your own spin on it, speaks a lot about you as an intellect and as a creative. And by putting people first, it sounds like you're not so much worried about the bottom line. We all have bills to pay, but it sounds like in your craft, you've been putting people first, and then the money has been following that path.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's something too that for years, I just recently took it off. I had chief janitor on the bottom of my email signature. Obviously, you know, mostly in jest, but kind of not.
Right.
But it's one of the idea that, you know, I mean, because, I hire grips to do this, and, lighting directors to do that, and DPs to run cameras, and other photographers to run bays, and stylists to do, right? And I am a firm believer that regardless of your position on set, everybody's got a role, but I don't think anybody should be above something. I feel like, and I'm not saying that you want the executive producer taking the trash out. At the same time, they should be willing to if that's a need, right? And so I feel like there's a cultural thing that I feel a lot of folks, maybe, I don't know. I don't want to talk ill of anybody. I just feel like if we could all come back to that center and be like, there's nothing, I like you, I love what we're doing, I want the best results. How do we get there collectively? Does that mean I need to take out the trash? Don't take out the trash.
Right. Mm-hmm.
I feel like that's the approach. And I feel like that probably has gotten us further than anywhere else.
It makes a really big difference because you're walking into the environment humble, and you're not bringing in an attitude, and you're recognizing that everybody, it doesn't matter who you are, deserves respect. I remember in a theater class, my professor said the most important person is a janitor because he or she has the keys.
Yeah. That's a cool way to put it. I'd never thought about it that way.
Yeah.
Writing that down.
Because how often do you run into a president of a company who doesn't have the keys and needs a janitor?
Oh yeah, shoot, we've run across some don't know where the front door is. Just astounds me.
I know, it's like, how did you get out of bed? Okay. That's why you have people to take care of you. I got it.
Yeah, exactly.
So
It
how
is
did
funny
it
that
feel? No, go ahead.
I was just gonna say it is kind of funny that we do have to deal with some handlers,
Yeah.
here and there with some of our clientele, as I'm sure most most photographers do. I mean, we all shoot. I feel like if not, even if you're doing portrait work, you still end up with somebody who is somebody at some point that has a handler. Um, and there was one, and I won't mention the company because it's a big company, everybody knows it. But we had the opportunity to go up and shoot some executive portraits for them up in the top of their skyscraper in another city, and it was very cool. And the majority of the folks were fine. And the I'll never forget it. The poor chairman of the board. This guy was, I don't know, I'd say mid 50s, like older, but still young enough to know better. He comes wandering in like Mr. McGee. Can't find the door. What are we doing? How come nobody told me this is happening? I would have worn a different tie. And his poor handler's like following him with a shirt and tie. And I thought, wow, that's where we're at. once he got settled and kind of calmed down, he was great. It was just kind of a funny thing,
Right.
just kind of watching that exchange happen, where he's like, "This wasn't on my schedule. What are we doing here?" Da da da. And she's like, "Sir, sir, sir." Like, oh, poor thing. She just has to. I can't imagine what she has to put up with on her daily. And then probably too, she's also probably also halfway running the company, right? Because she's like, "I would
Mm-hmm.
ask, but I know he's going to say this, so we're going to do it." So probably
Right.
very powerful in her own right, right?
Yep.
So
Everyone knows they go to her if you want something done
exactly,
from
exactly.
him.
Yes, yes. So really, she has all the power in that relationship.
Exactly. Yep. How did it feel when you began to win awards for your work? Because you've won some really impressive awards.
Well, thank you. Um, it's just fun. Um, I- I've heard a lot of argument about against creatives and kind of creative companies kind of doing awards. Everything from the Addy Awards to the Oscars, frankly. And I think I don't remember. I don't remember who said it. It was it was a director. Um, and he said the reason we have these awards is so that we can recognize within our own community when somebody has done something that affects the rest of our community in a positive way, which I thought was a really interesting way to put it. So anyway, it's just fun. I think it's fun. We have not submitted work for any of those awards in a long time, which is kind of a shame because we've got some really really cool stuff that we've done, that really is just sitting on ice, kind of waiting to be released, or post pandemic. Advertising is a little different than it was pre-pandemic, so but it's fun. You get dressed up, you go to a show, you sit at a table. A lot of times you get to see people you haven't seen in a year, maybe 2 years, maybe longer
Yeah.
than that. Yeah, the last I think the last Addy Awards I went to, I was at a table with two agencies that are no longer around, which is kind of wild to think
Oh,
about.
wow.
Yeah,
Wow. Whoa.
yeah.
So, how did you find opportunities to work with companies like Tyson Foods, Viking, Singer, Polaris, the National Guard? That's
Yeah, that
those are
was
some big
wild.
names.
Yeah, they are. It was funny. We just had a call with our. We have a marketing director, now that we're working with from Wonderful Machine, and she's been absolutely spectacular. But one of the funny things that she mentioned, she was like, "I need like a section on the website that says 'Go big or go home,' because everything's like, why work for that when you could go to the top?" Um, but all of those relationships, all of them started with a one on one, with a personal connection with somebody. Um, Tyson was with a friend of a friend that needed something for some tiny little grocery outlet that needed to be shot for some specialty cheese offering. And then that grew into this relationship where now he's the manager of national sales for a small distributor that then became, and then, 2 years later, he's like, hey, I've got an opportunity with Tyson. I've got an opportunity with Walmart. I've got an opportunity with, these huge companies. And it really just started with me going back and being like, this is not really what I do, but yeah, I'll help you out. You seem like a nice guy. It'll be fun. It'll be a different day. We're going to have a great conversation because I've never met anybody that has ever professionally spent their career in the grocery store. Okay, sure. Tell me more. Tell me all the things,
Right.
And then, but the same relationship. We're working on some stuff that's going to be released to Kroger and to Myers and to IGA, and I think Sam's is going to pick it up. Sam's Club is going to pick it up. So it's just, again, one relationship that just snowballs. The National Guard was a little different, though. That was a cold call. They needed somebody to run out and basically act as an embedded reporter for this National Guard training, and then also record those images for the agency so they could advertise the National Guard lifestyle. So that was a crazy job.
I can't imagine, because
Yeah.
those images of the National Guard are intense. Because you're right there, like the guns are going off. Like that's not Photoshop.
No, they set IEDs off. I had a flak jacket on. Like, it was, yeah. We breached a couple of doors and the doors blew back. One of them took out one of the cameras. Like, it was the real deal.
Oh, whoa.
Yeah, it was intense. But it was fun.
Wow.
It was like, had never done anything like that. Here I'm,
Yeah.
I don't know how much our cameras cost anymore, right? It's just, however, insert really expensive piece of equipment that's very fragile and sensitive to light, heat, moisture, and then put them in an environment that's full of light, heat, moisture, sand, all the things. Yeah. Yeah, that was an interesting one. But what's interesting about that too is some of those guys I worked with on that project, we've never worked together again. However, if I put something on social, I feel like they're some of the first people to be like, this looks great, how cool. So there was a certain level of relationship that was even built there that just becomes kind of personally a special thing. Instead of, again, it's not always about the bottom line. A lot of it's about the experience, the human experience,
Mm-hmm.
And that story. I mean, come on. It's a great story.
Right.
It sounds ridiculous. I'm like,
It's a great story.
I have a great shot tonight. One other thing about that National Guard thing, I've got a great shot of all the guys, all the photographers that were on the team, and we're standing on the steps of this weird training facility. It looks like a cross between like Raiders of the Lost Ark and something from like Transformers. It's so wacky. And we're in the middle of the desert in Arizona, and everybody's all like, and there's this one guy who's up at the top of the stairs, just this giant, huge, cheesy smile. It was just, I don't know. It kind of it encapsulated the whole thing, because we were like, tough, yeah, and we go through and we look and be like, oh my god, did you see that? That thing just blew up. Did you catch that? I think mine's overexposed, but that was amazing.
That would be a really fun opportunity. And what are these experiences like for you? Because you are setting up into a different scenario of photography and doing video for sewing machines versus Polaris and the National Guard. None of these environments are the same. So what is it like for you to prepare for these opportunities?
That's an interesting question. I feel like, how do I put this? So I'm a sucker for hip hop music, right? But also one of my great loves is classical music and jazz. But I also from time to time, I like a little metal, not gonna lie. So I feel like that's a little bit of what's in my personality, that I don't mind living in a world over here for a second and then coming over here and living in a world over here for a second. Because I feel like as a creative, it's easy to dial into one thing and do it really, really well and be really, really good at it. But I think part of my thought process and prep for any of those things is I go, what does that client want? And how can I make that the best possible mix that I can? Um, One of the shots we did for Singer, we took what's called a serger, which is an overlock machine, like makes the finishing edge unclose. And they were doing a whole campaign for these sergers, and it is a white machine on a white table, on a white background, on a white
Oh
wall.
no.
And we kind of go in, okay, how do we do this? Because they want everything to look bright and airy and open, you know. And so we were like, what do you fix with a serger? Like, why would somebody have one of these? And one of our clients was like, you know what? I fix my pillows with it. And I thought, there's something. So after a little bit of brainstorming, we came up with the idea to drop feathers all over. And it was, 5 or 6 shots
Yeah.
composited together. But you effectively have a white machine on a white table with slightly off white and gray feathers that causes a layer, right? So I think the image came out really dynamic because you've got effectively now 10 or 15 shades of everything on the top end of the spectrum, right? Because they wanted that white, open, airy, super approachable, fun shot. Well, to take that and then go to, say, some of the stuff we did for Military Systems Group, where we are in the woods, in the dark, with Humvees and dudes dressed in armor, and they're like, make it look cool. Well, at that point, the thought process is, okay, what's the client selling? What are we wanting to say about it? And then let's find a way to have the environment kind of speak back to us. So we would put lights behind one of the trucks that we gel and bread, so it makes the flash would look like the taillights of the vehicle, and we would hide lights effectively to spotlight where the headlights would be. Things like that, where you just begin to shape the environment around what that object is. A lot like the Serger, where the environment is like, okay, we have to keep everything white. How do we break that up to make it look visually interesting? So it's a similar thought process. But again, I think it's comes to loving contradictory things a lot of times.
Yeah. And taking a photographer's worst nightmare of a white item against a white background reflected by a white everything, and putting it into a manner where now you've created a story that's going to make it appealing to that prospective customer. But again, like you said, you start thinking about the scenario, but you put the client's needs first, and then you tied in your
Mm-hmm.
creativity.
And I think it's important. I think it's vitally important, um, especially when we think about photography specifically. It's our job to capture an idea, a scene, a narrative that then we let the audience stare at for as long as they want, right? It might be a moment as they scroll past. They may stop and stare at that thing for however long, right? So I think that's something that's always in the back of our mind when we start to build conceptually what that looks like. You know, with video, the editor gets to tell the person how long they're going to look at it. Now, they can watch that 10 times. There's not saying they can't pause it, but generally speaking, the mindset is they're going to watch it once, maybe twice, and then move on. With it still, you're living on that. There's a potential that someone would open that magazine or open that publication or open that web page, and it sits on their screen, it sits on their desk for however long. So with that, I feel like it's always important to think about how that narrative, how those layers of texture play visually, but also whatever that client's message is that's putting us there is the thing that still lives, if that makes any sense.
Mm-hmm.
Because I
Yeah,
feel like it's a little bit of a
absolutely.
stretch conceptually, but I also feel like it's kind of like you have to start there and then back into it and be like, what's going to make somebody look at this for more than, you know, whatever
Mm-hmm.
whatever the Facebook thing is, what is it, a third of a second as people
Something,
on
yeah.
pass, right?
Right. Mm-hmm.
So
That's gonna grab the eye and tell the story.
right,
And
right.
with And with your photography, it ranges from dark and moody to vibrant and bright. A lot of photographers cannot photograph in such a versatile range. Like when you look at a photographer's work, it'll be very, you can tell that they're using this particular light setup over and over and over. And that's their
Mm-hmm.
comfort zone, and that's what's working for them. Some photographers can only shoot indoors; they can't shoot outdoors. And you can shoot in a very versatile range of lighting situations, and you're consistently achieving high quality work. What do you feel is your skill set that you have to set you aside and photograph in such a variance of these lighting situations?
Well, thank you for thinking all of my work is high quality because that could be debated. um, uh, again, I think it goes back to looking and seeing what's there. And also, I think something is I don't mind trying something and being like, "Wow, we tried that. It looks like hot garbage. Let's try something else." I'm not afraid to be a little self-deprecating when I try something. Um,
Mm-hmm.
we photographed something together in a garage, and there were these grinders and all this stuff. And I remember we lit one scene, and we took one shot, and we looked at it over other, we're like, "Nope, nope." But I feel like, I mean, I've been doing this now, oh my gosh, for professionally for 23 years, which is crazy. So I feel like I failed enough times to be like, well, there's a there's not a right way to do that, but I know the wrong way to do it, so I'm not going to do it that way. You know? So I think it helps, but also I think that's the biggest thing for any of the young shooters that are trying to, okay, how do we break out of this? How do we do this? How, you know, is don't be afraid to just try it. It's you know what, and it probably will not work the first time. That's the best part about digital, right? You didn't spend $2 pulling a Polaroid to realize that it didn't work. It's totally free. You know, shoot it. If it works, great. If it doesn't, who cares? Relight it, move it. I think you know even with like portraits and events and weddings and stuff, if you got an idea, grab a couple friends and go try it. And again, there's a good chance that it might not work, but there's also a chance that it might be the best thing you've ever done. So yeah, is it worth a couple
Yeah.
minutes? I would say so. So
Mm-hmm.
there's been a lot of that, a lot of trial and error, a lot of trial and error, mostly error. You know, but I mean that's also the thing too. I'm shooting some leather wallets right now for a client for an e-commerce project, and these things are mirror finished. They're mirror finished, and
Oh
of course they
no.
want them on white, and they want them lit a certain way. You know, and the first hour and a half was just like, nope, that doesn't work. Nope, that didn't work. Let's tweak this. Let's tweak this. Let's tweak this. Until we got to a point where we're like, okay, that starts to look sassy. That's fun. Now there's a nice gradient. We've got a little bit of shadow. There's a little bit of depth. There's a lot of those things that. But again, it's just trying and trying and trying and trying and trying.
And not being
So
afraid of it going wrong.
yeah, I mean, if it goes off the rails, start over. Also,
Mm-hmm.
I have trouble remembering what I did last time. I think I'm a little bit forgetful when it comes to the technical stuff. So unless I write it down, I'm like, I know we did something like this last time. Let's try it again. So I think out of that has come some ingenuity, just out of my forgetfulness. Just
And
being
being
honest.
honest about it. Some people wouldn't have the ability to be that honest because they would let their ego get in the way. And then it just
Yeah.
turns into a big, frustrated battle where you're like, I don't remember. Let's just try things till it works.
There was a guy that he was an IT guy, and what I don't remember how our interaction was, but I do remember him telling a story about he got really frustrated at the server, and he actually picked up a screwdriver and he threw it. Well, he ended up throwing it through the drywall, and so it stuck like in the drywall this way.
Oh,
And where it
no.
poked out was the guy that hired his office, and he thought, you know, oh no, I'm fired. The guy came around the corner, was like, everything okay? And he's like, yeah, I tossed that a little too hard. And he's like, not a big deal, just checking on you. And he said after that experience, he realized, why am I letting something that is just a matter of problem solving get me so bothered that I'm about to ruin a relationship over it? And I thought, there's some wisdom beyond professionalism there, right?
Yeah.
There's, you know, so anyway, I feel like that's kind of the approach, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we all have time constraints and things have to get done in a certain amount of time. So, you know, you got to know when to move on, but at the same time, try it, right?
Yeah. It's not brain or heart surgery.
Yeah, nobody's going to die if your picture looks like crap. You can always hire someone online to fix it, right? You know, there are great
Right.
retouchers that are for hire online.
Oh my gosh, the retouchers out
Don't do that.
there.
Shoot it right.
Yeah, right. What are the challenges that you face with photography, like doing photos with such a wide variety of subjects?
Um, the I think the biggest challenges with all the different subjects and all the different types of clients we shoot with is it just education, letting them know kind of what best practices are. I'm a big internet nerd, so I'm like feel like I'm constantly reading these weird marketing articles about, oh, this study came out about how many times people click a pink rose versus a red rose and all that stuff. And so we're kind of constantly trying to bring some of that education to the table and be like, regardless of what the product is, here's some best practices, right? We know that right now people are shopping on the internet like this, or people are looking at things like this, or people are buying these things more than these things. And it's just kind of bringing that to the table and saying, okay, I know that you have in your mind this vision of this thing, but 1984 called, they want their idea back, and we're going to go with something that will actually push the meter forward. Because ultimately, 98% of what I do is commercial work. So my job is to make them money effectively, right? I'm a vehicle for their company to increase revenue. So it is kind of nice that if I'm like, love that idea, let's do that on Saturday. Today, though, let's do something that'll move that needle. But I feel like that's the biggest challenge because we absorb so much media. There's so much content out there that we see something, we're like, oh, that's such a great idea. I had a client that was in love with that caveman ad from several years ago.
Oh no.
Okay, great. I'm not. I am going to be completely honest. I thought that campaign was ridiculous, but you know what? We still talk about it, so it was a successful campaign. Well, he wanted to do this with golf clubs, cavemen playing golf. Okay, but it was an educational thing where I'm like, okay, who's your demo? Who are you talking to? Who's buying your stuff? So I think that's probably the biggest challenge with the variety of things because we have Singer is still a giant client for us. They're incredible. They've been absolutely phenomenal to us, and they let us do a ton of things that I think if it weren't for such a long-standing relationship, that people would be a little scared about. But approaching them about, oh, let's do this idea, let's do this concept, versus I'm trying to think somebody that, well, we've got a new relationship with a leather goods company, and they do incredible things, and it's all high end, and they make stuff out of like the stuff that sports car seats are around. The stuff is phenomenal, way out of my price range, but it's still really cool stuff to be around. But like their approach is going to be completely radically different than Singer's, right? Because Singer's selling in 19 countries. They're just a huge shop. Nobody has a bad memory of their grandma's Singer sewing machine. Well, these guys, nobody's heard of them. Nobody's heard of their product. It's super cool. It does kind of fit in a category, but not really. So their approach has to be completely different. And just kind of walking through that with them and being like, I know that you want to advertise like Gucci and Hermes and these other giant luxury brands. They are selling a name at this point. You don't have a name yet. You will, but right now we just need to sell the quality, the craftsmanship. It's the approach is, it's almost like the bullet points are the same, but the approach is completely different.
Right. And so you're having these conversations with them to find out who is their ideal client, And then you're looking at, like you said, you've done a lot of research, you pay attention to what's going on so that you can come to the table with ideas of, like, the caveman with the golf clubs. That, that sounds like it needs to be tabled. But you're at least willing to have the conversations with these people, the business owners and the marketing directors, and saying, that's great. Let's try this along with that. Where I think a
And
lot of
again, keeping in
photographers don't
mind,
realize they can have those conversations.
yeah, and I think too, keeping in mind that as difficult it is to be, especially sometimes in a business environment, there's still a person on the other side. They're still going to go home to their partner. They're still going to go home to their pet. You know, they're still going to sit down on a couch and probably do a thing, right? So I feel like some of that, it's so easy to be like, that's the stupidest idea I've ever heard. I mean, but it'd be like, that's hilarious. Okay, let's back into that. It's just keeping that in mind where you're like, even though my personal reaction might not be like, I don't see the vision for that. Maybe I would. Explain it to me. Keep talking about it. Let's talk through it. Let's see if we can make that work. And then you get to a point where it either works or it doesn't work. And thankfully, we have gracious enough clients that they sometimes will listen to what we say, and other times they're like, you know what? We're writing you the check. Just make it happen. And then we go, great. We have a challenge. Let's put a golf club in a caveman's hand.
Right?
And it's going to look great.
It's going to look fantastic.
I'm kind of thinking I need to bring that back. That might be my next personal project.
That would be hilarious.
Taking volunteers for cavemen. I need actors.
How did the pandemic in 2020 affect your work?
It was a challenge, just like it was with everybody. We did strangely enough, we had a pretty decent year that year, partially due to the fact that a lot of our clientele are manufacturers. There's a lot of, we make this thing, and so we shifted from drop it off at the studio to ship it to my house or ship it to one of my business partners' houses. Excuse me. So there was, that transition from going to their office or going to their warehouse and then us shipping it to it wasn't huge. There definitely was a hiccup, but it wasn't quite as big. I think stylistically, it made me want to make everything bigger, if that makes sense. You know, I put a story up on my Instagram a couple of days ago where we were photographing this, English muffin, so that big. Well, 10 feet away, we had a 12 by, and we had 3 lights bouncing into an 8-foot Ellen Chrome that had diffusion over it, and then that was pushed back into the corner, and then we had another light that was like 17 feet away that was way up in the air that cranked way up just to give a little bit of a rim shadow. It was just, I feel like that's symptomatic of the pandemic because we shot so much stuff and like, okay, we have a 4x4 box and we've got to shoot something that's 3'7" by 3'7". How do we do this? And so I think my post that it's like, let's get a 6,000 square foot room, put one object in the very center of it, and light giant things around it. I don't know if that's, probably not the wisest decision, but at the same time, that's where we're at right now.
Yeah, and it worked.
My chair fell.
And then you started to transition from photography into video. What was the motivation to start adding video to your repertoire?
Sure. Well, my degree is in media arts, which is effectively a major of photography, a minor in film and video. So it's kind of always been there, but it's always been in the background. It started with a company called Fit Desk. I don't know if they're around still or not, but they basically made a stationary bike with a laptop stand. And they had another gentleman do some video work for them, and it just didn't have any of the trappings of what we were capturing for the photography campaign. So I just casually asked the owner, I was like, we can literally set the same exact shot up, use a different light, and basically get the same thing we're getting in the stills, the same feel, the same vibe in the video that you would in the still campaign. And he it kind of blew his mind. He was like, I didn't, but I thought video was a different thing. And I'm like, it is, but we can achieve the same thing pretty easily. And that kind of started us providing kind of this quiet video service for all our clients. And then once things started getting bigger, we actually started building effectively video shoots that happened to have a still component. And that kind of began to change some of our clients' minds, think, oh, motion is more important for selling online than stills in our niche, in our genre, because then people get to see the thing working. They get to see it in action, which a lot of times is more powerful than seeing a still photograph of it for certain people. I mean, that's not for everybody, but for a group of our clients, that made a ton of sense. And so we kind of flipped the script on them. Instead of having a big photo shoot where we brought a video camera to, we had a video shoot and brought a still setup. So, but it really was just the client need. It was the client ask. It was, us being like, we can probably do that better for maybe the same, maybe even a little less than what they're charging for, just because everything's here. It's just a matter of adding a few things on and building a workflow around that thing for you.
Yeah. And was it your work in video that made you decide to start your new company, Reactor Media?
Somewhat. Some of it too is, as photographers, our biggest challenge, right, is scalability. Because you can't be here talking to me and out shooting that thing over there, and I can't be here and shooting that thing over there, right? So it's finding like-minded individuals that are equally talented, more talented, that are willing to come into some type of relational thing to kind of help that scalability, right? That growth model. And then ultimately, then like any other business, right? If you have, I don't know, I mean, insurance is a good example, right? That's why I have insurance groups. Because if you go to an insurance company, they're like, oh yeah, we'll insure you for $20,000 a month. But if you join this group, you could do it for $400, which is still absurd. But the idea being that the group has more buying power. We've got more things to offer. We can provide more solutions for our clients. So that was really kind of the start of that Reactor idea. It has been a great opportunity for me to explore more motion work, which I find very satisfying, and I think it's a really, really fun way to tell a story. And I think I'm such a movie nerd that it's fun to be like, well, I saw this thing in this movie that I saw back in the 90s, and I think we should try it on this shoot because it might be able to really do this really cool thing, and then having a couple other folks around me that are nerdy enough to be like, oh yeah, we're doing that, but have that space to do it. I'm working with Nick Bumgardner in this partnership, and I say this all the time, and he kind of laughs every single time, but I think he's forgotten more about cameras than I'll ever know. I really do. Like he will tell us like what the coating on a lens is and why it's rendering a color a certain way. I mean, the man is this technological encyclopedia of the stuff, and it comes out in his work because he will sit on his laptop in the studio, staring at a shot of something as like a shoe for a client, a pair of shoes. And I'll be like, you know what? I think I want these shadows 5% less dense, and I'm like, sure, okay, right. So we make the adjustments, and you look at it and you're like, he was right. That's what it needed. Give me, So it's like that level of technical nerdery and mastery over those tiny little details. It's just been a great opportunity for me to just kind of give him things to do, and then just kind of step away and let him do his thing. And then it frees me up to be like, if we move the camera from left to right here, then that'll create this type of motion so we can, right? So now I'm not the one being like, well, take a bunch of pictures and then we're going to try to do a little video, and I'm exhausted because it's the end of the day and we're trying to squeeze this in. It just allows for a better overall product, which has been fun. It's been a fun exploration.
Yeah, I would think that would be a lot of fun because you're both working for your strengths and you're letting him do the thinking of the technical and you're letting your brain work on the creativity and you're coming together and producing an amazing product.
Yeah, I've really I've really enjoyed working with Nick over these last couple of years. So I'm glad we're able to come to a place where we can try to have a little project together.
Yeah. And you say in your website for Reactor Media, imagine what would happen if you could stop wasting resources and start building a solid plan of action to boost your next campaign to the next level. How do you help your clients reach that next level?
Well, I wrote that during the pandemic, so I was kind of living in a bubble. No, I think it starts with listening. You know, there's I've I went to a kind of a business kind of incubator kind of masterclass, if you will. It was about 18 months, and the one thing that I kept taking away from every single session, kind of regardless of what it was on, was the lack of listening to the end client, lack of listening to the employees, lack of listening to the whatever somebody along the chain wasn't listening. And I thought if we can just stop and listen to what those needs are, listen to what those pain points are, that's going to get us a lot closer to what the client wants. And I feel like that's kind of where that statement came out of, because it's like we can help you get there. Let's just talk. Let's just slow down. I know everybody's got places to be, but give me a half an hour and talk me through what the problem is, because it may not even be related to photography. Um, we had a client. This has been a couple of years ago, but they're a restaurant, and their problem was is they wanted more business. Well, their parking lot didn't have enough parking spaces. That's not something we can solve with pictures or video or anything else, right? If you got 5 spots in your lot, you're stuck with 5 spots. You're not. It's gonna be very difficult for you to increase the volume of butts in seats.
Mm-hmm.
But through that relationship, we were able to help them build a splash page that talked about takeout, talk about delivery, and kind of begin to help them think beyond this kind of linear problem. And not say that we were consultants that need to come in and tell people how to run their businesses. It grew out of this idea that that next level for them really had very little to do with the imagery and more to do with the messaging. And that we could just be a sounding board and kind of let them kind of throw ideas at us. We came up with a solution that ended up great for us, because now we went from doing a menu shoot for them to a menu shoot, helping them build out a splash page, which required more imagery. We did video for them. We did interviews. We did a couple testimonials. We built an online training thing for them so that they had people on the back end that could effectively come be drivers and cooks and all those things for them. So it ended up being a much bigger project for even us, but it was
Mm-hmm.
just listening through what that business problem was. So I think that's when I say, how can we help you bring that campaign to the next level? In my mind, I'm going, there's a solution to whatever that business problem is. Can we sit and talk about it? Because I'm pretty sure we can come up with a really sassy way to figure that problem out. So,
Yeah. And again, it comes to putting the people first and listening.
mhm.
It makes such a big difference that it's a quick oversight, and I think you really nailed it. Like, everyone's busy, everyone has a place to be, but to really get to the next level of success, you have to slow down. You have to slow down.
Yeah, I'm sure there's some quippy race car quote that you could stick in there, but right,
Right. And with
lightning
your
avoiding
your
balls.
business, exactly. And with your business Reactor Media, what services are you offering your clients? I mean, you're technically not offering consulting, but in a way, when you sit down with them, you're giving them some pretty valuable information.
Yeah, well, I mean, we do have strategy kind of listed as one of the services, because I think it's so important. And this happened a couple of weeks ago. We're not a great fit for this company, um, but we had a short engagement where I wrote a strategy doc out for him. I said, okay, here's what I heard. Here's some thoughts. Here's what I think are some things to avoid. And I literally hopped online and Googled those problems that we came up with and pulled about 20 articles. And I said, here's 20 articles relating to what we talked about. I don't know if they have any value or not, but they're at least worth a view. And out of that, they went and found another provider, and they did some great things. So I think it's so critical to find what that thing is, right? Because I mean, even little photography, even a hey, I'm going to get two things shot, is an investment. I mean, two things videoed is even more an investment. So it's like, I'm always of the mindset like, people are gonna be cranky if they spend money on crap, right? We all are. We've all bought that cheap earbuds at the airport that were like $22. Are you kidding me? Probably 40 now, you know.
Yeah.
And they work for half the trip, and then they're all staticky, right? Well, irritated about it. So it's kind of like, how do you avoid that professionally? You know, how do you keep that from happening? Um, anyway, um, but yeah. So back to your question, the services we provide. The idea is that we're a media content creator. Like we're a media studio. So whatever that is, we're kind of, I've been pitching it to say that we're there to fill the creative gaps. So um, if your creative department is overrun on deadlines and you need us to help you roll out some packaging, we've got some incredible designers that we can oversee, so you don't have to. We're fully equipped to do full production. So photos and videos, but also if you just need somebody to edit all that interview footage that you took back in January that you haven't touched, we can edit it for you. We can color it for you. We can make things match. The idea is to fill the gaps for people who are trying to fulfill a creative need in their silo of operations. So sales, marketing, internally, we're working on something internally for a company right now that will never see the light of day as far as anybody else, but was just building a really, really good internal presentation so that people in the company feel good about what their new CEO is talking about. Um, it's just that's the idea.
Yeah, it's fantastic. And it's really nice for a prospective client to be able to go to someone like you and have it all basically in house.
Yeah, I mean there's so with the way the economy is and has been and probably will continue to be. I constantly hear about like, oh, well, we just laid off all of our creative department except for our two graphic designers. And I'm thinking those poor designers. They
Yeah,
lost all their layers of management. They lost all the people that have been doing it for 30 years that can tell that have the wisdom to tell the brass to be like, that's not a priority. Get out of here. I've got this is my list of priorities and this is a list of the things that the team executed. And they just left with these two designers that are just now drowning under the weight of what was a 15-person creative team. We've heard that several companies. So if there's a little model that we can come in and just be a little bit of a vent for some of those folks, then they're going to do better work.
yep.
We could do some fun work, some people we haven't worked with, or more work with folks. So
And do you feel your success is due to luck or your hard work and talent?
maybe. Um, I I I there's been a lot of hard work. One of the things that I think people don't see about entrepreneurs and sole props is when we're up at 5 in the morning and we're there to get emails out the door because we know the kids wake up at 5:45 because they've got to be out the door by 6:30, and we've got to squeeze some type of a walk or a jog or something in before the day gets rolling, and our first call's at 7:15, and then oh by the way, we've got to do a thing after the kids get home. I got to go do this thing, and then I've got to be at a business thing until 9 o'clock, and then I'm on my laptop till 11. So I've got to get up the next morning at 5 to finish the thing. So there's that component to every single business operator. And okay, here you are. If you have had at least a season of that in running your own business, running at the top level of your business. A lot of people are doing that with their regular jobs too. So there's that level of hard work that I think comes into all of it, and I think out of that builds a tenacity. Hopefully it's tenacity. Hopefully not spite. Hopefully it's tenacity. uh, but also I think I wouldn't call it luck, but I feel like if you put positivity out there, it returns. I think that there's something to that. I feel like, and you can call it whatever you want, but I feel like certain vibrations echo, right? You know, if you're happy and you're
Absolutely.
positive and you try to encourage things, It's that whole winners win, losers lose thing, right? Same outtake. The winners are like, oh my gosh, wow, that was incredible. And the people that have this kind of a self-deprecating attitude are like, oh, I can't believe I barely squeaked by. I would, right? So it's that. I think there's something to that where you have that positive energy and that positive outlook, and you're trying to be kind to people. I feel like that comes back. So I think there's definitely a component of that. There are definitely phone calls I've gotten because one of my grips was really nice and helped them out the door, and they were super impressed. And you're like, what a weird. How did? Okay, sure, of course. So I think there's something to that.
The universe provides. I feel if you're putting out the energy, the universe is going to recognize that. Like you said, it's a vibration, and it comes back to you.
Yeah.
And what is it that you love about what you do?
The three favorite. I'm going to make a complete sentence. Stand by. Here we go.
Words are hard.
They can be. I think the three things I love the most about my job. I love stories. I love a good story. And even if the work itself is not providing a really clear narrative, the people around it always are. I have yet to meet. It's almost like the more boring the product, the more interesting the individual, which I think is an interesting curve. And I feel like that on the other end too. It's like you have a really interesting product. Sometimes you don't connect with the people because you're like, this thing is really cool. But it's just the stories, the narratives, the people. And I love at the end of the day looking at something and being like, wow, we did that. There's a satisfaction to accomplishing a very difficult goal of creating something really cool. There's we've got this great client. They make these beautiful handmade shoes. They're sustainable, and they've got all of these incredible programs for minority work, and they're doing a great job. And they recently picked up another client that added to the ask for us, which is great for them. That's why we're here, is to help them grow. So hopefully there's some correlation there. But Nick and I were reviewing images after the first day, and he pulls up this screen. It's just, I don't know how big his screen is, with 27 inches, something like that. And it's just rows of just beautiful, pre-retouched right out of the camera, beautiful images that they're just perfect. You get an idea of exactly what each one is and the different nuances of the soul or the this or that. And those moments where you're like, okay, that's cool. We did that. We did that today. I don't know. I think that's a really cool moment, with that sense of accomplishment, of creating really something really beautiful, and kind of being able to stand back and have that moment go, whew, yep, that was a lot of work, but we did that. Nice. So I love that part.
Yeah, it has to be incredibly rewarding, and to have that gratification of your hard work and your creative talent, and to be right there in front of you.
And it's nice too to see that kind of sense of accomplishment on some of the guys and the gals that we work with, because we've all been there. When we get done with something, we're like, good enough. All right, time for margaritas and tacos, and then to end the day and just be like, yeah, we crushed that. There's a sense of, like, I don't know, that kind of permeates beyond just like doing really good work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And do you have a dream photo or video session?
I don't know if I do. I jokingly say, half joking, if I could do anything, I would be in a different city around the world every day, and sample a local dish, wine, cocktail, whatever, and fly my drone. Obviously, that's hyperbole. Maybe once a week, but no, I don't think so. The process is so much fun. We we get to touch so many things. We get to talk to so many people. It really is. If there are 2 days that are the same, it's because we messed the first day up and had to redo it. You know,
Yeah.
so that helps.
And you have a quote on your
How's that?
social media by the Dalai Lama. Once a year, go someplace you've never been before. Where is someplace you want to go that you've never been before?
So I think that's an interesting, really interesting quote. I'm a big quote guy because I feel like maybe it's we're inherently what I do makes me busy by nature. So I like the idea of having that little quote, right? And I mean, it's every business owner, every exec, every person that's been where they're responsible for 55 things. I think we all share a kindred of just the busy, right? You do 4 things and then 10 more things are behind you, and you never can get ahead of it. So I love these little quotes, these little kind of nuggets of wisdom. Um, and I haven't looked into it, but I almost wonder if the translation of someplace is maybe a little more broad than a physical place. If it's a mental place, if it's an emotional place, if it's a spiritual place. Um, I don't know. I kind of like that idea. So I think one thing that I would like to explore, one place that I've never been, I would like to go to some place like in Indonesia or in Iceland or something like that that's relatively remote, and find myself to the top of a cliff and just sit and experience that that thing. Um, I've never been to Indonesia or Iceland, so both those would count, I guess, right? Um,
Uh, yeah.
but just adding that extra layer of just we're we're so plugged in. We're there's constant screens and everything. It's like what how interesting would it be to go to a place like that and just sit and breathe?
Yeah.
I don't know. That's a goal.
That's a great goal. And I think when people start to find opportunities to put the screen down, they begin. I've noticed this on, of course, social media posts, but like there's a photographer, Theron Humphrey. He is in Arizona working on a project and he hasn't been on his phone. And he made a comment, I think it was yesterday, that he was finding himself at his dopamine levels were higher and he was feeling just like joy and happiness about life again.
Yeah, that's interesting.
We gotta put the phones down.
Yeah,
And you have
yeah.
a photograph of a quote that states, if you want something you've never had, then you've got to do something you've never done. When it comes to achieving your goals, doing something you've never done can be really, really scary. What would you say to someone out there who's longing for something they've never had?
So there's another quote, since we're in the quote section. Nelson Mandela said it. He said it seems impossible until it's done, right? So I feel like if you kind of smash those two together, right, it's always scary. And I do understand having to have boundaries, and you've got to guard your heart. You have to guard your mind. But at the same time, none of us know that we don't have only this run on this rock. Maybe we do, maybe we don't. But nobody alive knows.
Yeah.
So try it. I mean, and again, you've got to know yourself. You've got to guard your heart. You've got to guard your mind. You've got to guard your peace. All those things. However, if you don't push yourself, you're not going to go anywhere. You've got to be bold enough with yourself to say you got to love yourself enough to try something that might make you uncomfortable, but ultimately might yield you a great reward. And especially if you're longing for something, I feel like that's kind of the brain space that you have to be in. I think it's important too, especially as creatives, we have such a tendency to see the finished painting and not stop and go, that person worked on that for 3 years. So the journey almost always becomes more important than end goal. So what about that journey is terrifying? What about that journey is not terrifying? And then maybe take that step that's not terrifying that might lead you to that step that maybe is a little less scary because you're one step closer.
Yeah.
For what it's worth.
Baby steps. And what are your
Yeah.
goals for this year?
I'd like to sleep more. Um,
That's a good goal.
I think goals for this year. I mean, we just launched this reactor thing, so it's growing that, getting into a lot of different conversations that are, you know, valuable to people. You know, not just talking to talk, but talking to go somewhere. I would love to have um, some really great conversations about making community, kind of growing the community here in Nashville, Middle Tennessee. I feel like there's so many incredible creatives. It's like I feel like we just need to have more conversations and more like how do we kind of continue to foster this community so it continues to grow because everybody's I feel like so many people are splitting disciplines. You've got chefs that are musicians and musicians that are photographers and video guys that are chefs, and you know it's all you've got all these things and everybody is just these crazy talented creative people. How do we begin to foster that community a little more? How do we encourage each other? How do we, you know, as a group kind of begin to really raise each other up? So I'd love for us to be able to be just even a small part of that, you know. Um, and then I think selfishly, I've got some ideas for some short films that I think we want to try to do this year. So we might do a little
Excellent.
entertainment work. I don't know if it's going to go anywhere, but it'll be fun to try it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so there's my goals.
That's fantastic. And I agree. Creatives, my very first mentor told me creatives support creatives.
We have to.
Yeah. And we stand
Part of
stronger
the part of
together
the
than we
creed.
do apart.
Absolutely.
So if someone wants to
Absolutely.
learn more about you, your services, what you do, like where can they find you?
Sure, we've got a brand new website. It's reactormedia.io because we're nerds. Um, and you can go there. There's a bunch of pictures up there. You can always reach out to Nick or I. We'll go have coffee, lunch, a whiskey. I don't know, whatever you get to pick. Yeah, Instagram. Admittedly, I have not been great at the company profile, but my personal profile, which is D'Amico Photo. I'm on there probably more than I should be. Um, so you can always hit me up there. We're going to start doing a great web series here pretty soon. Just kind of a town hall style thing where we're just going to get together and maybe we complain about clients. Maybe we praise our clients. Maybe we don't even talk about clients and talk about you know somebody lost a bet on some baseball game. I don't know. It doesn't matter. So we'll be starting that up here in a couple of months. So be looking for that, and I'll put all that information on the website. Yeah, that's what I got.
It's great. And I'll get all those links posted in the show notes. I know you're super busy, and taking this much time out of your schedule is very much appreciated. Thank you so much for being here today.
Oh, thank you. This was great. Thank you for taking the time and for the crazy questions. Those were really hard questions.
Good. I gotta keep you on your toes.
Yeah.
Somebody does, right?
Yeah, exactly. I'm like, yeah, no, you're right. Got to keep me guessing.
Absolutely. Well, I really appreciate you. Thank you so much.
No, thank you. Thanks for having me again. I appreciate it.
That's it with Kris D'Amico. It was a lot of fun to talk with this man who has really grown personally and professionally throughout the years in an industry he absolutely loves, and by being genuine to who he is and what he stands for, has brought him success over the years. Next week, we talk with Danica Danielle, a hairstylist and makeup artist who believed that she could, so she did. And that has led her to owning two salons and traveling across the US to do hair for a variety of incredible opportunities, celebrities, and red carpet events.
And that was like a Mercedes Benz commercial. And then she asked me if I would go to the NFL draft with her in Nashville because I'm local in Nashville, and I was like, yes. So I went with her and did her hair and makeup for her at the NFL draft in Nashville. So I worked with her for a while, and then she got married and moved to LA. So she's not here in Atlanta much anymore, but yeah, she was a really good client. I enjoyed working with her.
What was it like to be at the NFL draft?
Oh my gosh, we being with her, being at the NFL draft and being Maria Taylor's hair and makeup artist was a dream because we had access to just, you know, we didn't have to. We were escorted in on, like on golf carts. We just didn't have to, and we were on top of like all of the rooftops, and she was of course doing her thing, and I was making sure she looked amazing, and I mean it was a dream.
Hey, thanks for listening to Journey to the Rise. Please do follow us on your podcast apps. You have the latest episode downloaded. If you want to follow us on Instagram, our account is at Journey to the Rise Podcast. This episode is researched, produced, and edited by Girl Boss Productions. And remember to be kind to yourself. When you are kind to you, it is easier to be kind to others. I am Lucretia, and you've been listening to Journey to the Rise.